So we are having this time to think about the interconnected systems framework. So this approach of blending school mental health and multi-tiered systems of supports together in a cohesive framework to provide systems, not only change, but interruption, and really a focus on equity and a focus on holistic support through a framework that many people on this call have been working on and implementing and toying with and retooling. That framework has been in place, and part of the reason that we're coming together today is that when Kelsey and Susan and I were all in conversation 2 weeks ago, we really felt like this time there was such a shift to school mental telehealth and providing virtual student supports. And some of us were kind of not forgetting, but not necessarily using the tools and the approaches that we were already implementing and providing in this new time. Meaning what we wanted to do was kind of create this thought time of thinking like, how can we actually use the framework that we've been working and advocating for to support the needs of this moment? And how might this moment push the framework to grow in new ways? So both and. The other piece that the three of us felt, and this is kind of why I'm focusing on the why of this think tank, is that we felt like there was a lot coming at the field, and we wanted to create a space where we could actually sit in more questions and in more discovery and in more discussion versus providing. So the purpose of this time period, this literal time period together, is to identify more questions and answers. So if we get off at 1:15 or wherever time you are, and there's like more ideas than there are concretes, that's perfect. That's what we want. We are asking for us in our dialogue today to be much more focused on systems-focused support rather than on a specific service for a specific population. And we're also really asking us to have equity at the forefront. And when I mean equity, I mean for those whose needs are and for those who are experiencing most harm in this moment, and also from what we know because of systemic violence and oppression, will experience disparity in access to healing when whatever resumes. So the identification, more questions, system, and an eye for whose needs and whose needs are at the forefront and who's the most disenfranchised for always and also now in this moment. So we're really, we're also going to kind of move into some collective action, some ideas, less, when I say resources, I'm talking less like, here's this thing, and much more like, I would like to support you and I'd like to collaborate with you. So using us, our social capital as resources, and then also for us to kind of grow in our own skills. So all that to say, that's the why of why we're here. Hopefully you all feel welcomed. Welcome to our lunch party. We're going to take, after I stop talking, we're going to take 10 minutes for Susan to offer some grounding so that we can really be united in some common language. For those of you, some of this might be the language that you use all the time, and some of this might be new language, and that's okay. I'm going to ask you not muted to mute yourself. Thank you. And then we're going to break out into small discussion groups for us to identify challenges and celebrations and considerations. And we'll all come. And I am still hearing some background noise. That might be me. And then we'll close with some commitments. So that's the idea. I also want to name that this is a total experiment in virtual think tanking. So please be patient with us. And this is not, if this feels really good to everyone on the call or some of us on the call, this doesn't have to be the only thing. This is just the start. Okay, last thing I think before Susan, I'm cueing you, which is that I'm going to offer the following working agreements for our time together. I'm going to offer that we really sit with a lens of curiosity over analysis, right? Some more questions and answers, that we're mindful of our mic time. So to find that kind of contributor listener sweet spot, there are many of us who are experts in our field, lots of writers, thinkers, practitioners. And so we want to kind of be mindful of our hats. I want to just name that there's always enough time for the right work. That's what Adrienne Marie Brown says. So if we're feeling rushed, like you might hear in my voice right now, I'm going to remind myself, like, what happens on this time happened in this time. I'm going to ask for us, especially in our small breakouts, to use names and spell out acronyms as much as possible, because we're really cross-pollinating with paradigms and with people. And then the last piece is, sorry, the second to last piece is to the offering of less doing and more presence. So for us to have time, like sweet time, to kind of sit in curiosity and wonderment. And then the last piece is that this is also from Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy, which is that there is a conversation that only the people in this room right now can have, and let's find it. And with that, you can totally use, and Yasmina, I will send this to everyone so you can have these for your future use. With that, I'm going to pass it to Susan, and I am going to mute myself. And then Susan, I'm going to offer you that 8 to 10 minute, and then we're going to move into our small breakout groups. So my invitation for folks on the line is, again, this is for us to kind of get some grounding in some common language, and then we're going to get into some discussion.
Great, thanks, Laura. My name is Susan Barrett, so I'll introduce myself, and I am with the Center on PBIS, and it's really great to have you here with us this afternoon in our think tank space. Many of you know that Lucille Eber, Mark Weiss, Nancy Lever, Sharon Stephen, so many people have contributed to the work of an interconnected systems framework, but I want to make sure that as we go into our breakout rooms and we have this dialogue and conversation, that we are kind of understanding what ISF is. So I'm going to do a couple of setup slides and then a couple of call out slides before we go into our discussion. Again, we always hated that we had to create a new acronym, so we apologize for that, but we really wanted to create something that collectively I think we were all really engaged in, and that was really trying to address the wave of mental health needs for our students. And this is kind of setting the stage prior to COVID-19. We were all kind of engaged in this work that we really needed to target and focus at the systems level, and we need to address this within a single system of delivery, right? We needed all the related initiatives that were falling under the mental health bucket to be aligned and integrated and really driven with that systems mindset, and really kind of this notion that we wanted to redesign the education landscape with kind of that whole child lens. And we wanted to put families and youth as kind of serving as in a central role to this work with ISF. So we've been kind of developing this out. It is a very much of an iterative process. The other thing that we were really aware of is that the teams were really the central to this framework, that MTSS core features and the work that we had been doing with PBIS and MTSS in installing a systems level redesign, if you will, that the teams were going to be the driving force. They were going to be the backbone to all of this work. That the teams needed a step-by-step process, right? We really needed to script the moves out. And we also knew that, that if we were going to really make some significant and needed changes to redesign that education landscape, that we had to put people who had the authority to reallocate resources and change policy and blend funding and change roles of function staff. We really need those people to participate at the state level team, at the district level team, and that we needed our leaders to really lead this and help support how it was developed out at the school level. So ISF is really that structure, and that process is guided by key stakeholders from the mental health system and our community partners, and into the education landscape that can really guide the significant turnaround in how we're doing. And thanks to Mark Weiss and his team, who really conducted some of the research on some of the benefits of ISF, and many of you are serving in demonstration sites and roles, and we're also seeing this anecdotally play out. But we're seeing that the benefits of ISF mean that we are actually uncovering the needs earlier. We are linking students with evidence-based interventions much quicker. We've got data tracking systems that are ensuring that our youth are actually receiving those and showing improvement, so we can actually see the benefits in real time with some of the data tracking systems that we have in place. We're also expanding the roles for clinicians to support the adults, and we're kind of focused on that adult wellness piece. And we're really focused on this proactive preventative approach in which we are stepping into a much healthier school environment for all of our students, but we're really able to meet the needs very quickly for students that need more from us. So we're seeing actually this play out in some of the research, as well as some of the stories that we're hearing from the field across the country. And then finally, just to kind of circle around this notion that we're all kind of rallying around these core messages. We all serve in kind of this technical assistance or practitioner role. And it's really important that as we drive this process of change, that we are anchored in kind of common and core key messages. And so with the ISF approach, we're thinking about this in terms of one set of teams. We're thinking about the work that it's not defined by access to services, that we're really crystal clear about what students are getting and receiving, and that we define success by the outcomes and the impact and the benefit rather than just counting the number of kids who are accessing services. The third key message is that mental health is for all. And we all need mental health, we all need social emotional competencies, but we also all have a role to play in making sure that our kids are well. And then finally, that MTSS core features are absolutely essential to installing anything, including our school mental health. So we kind of put a pause on that just to make sure that we're all kind of rallying around this kind of common concept, and wanted to break down what interconnected system framework was for everyone, knowing that most of you in this think tank space with us are part of contributing to that. But we also wanted to kind of call out some things that COVID-19 has really amplified over the past month, and things that we were all very much keenly aware of prior to this, but now just are really elevating in this moment in time. And we really wanted to call out some observations of that. So one of the things that I'm sure you all have observed too is that, number one, schools are actually the primary care providers, and they're also basic service providers. Right now, we've got more of our schools feeding our communities that in normal times our schools are places of shelter, they're places of safety, they're places where most of our kids actually get mental health and wellness supports, and where they're obviously educated. Number two, something that I think in the last month has absolutely amplified, that there are caring, compassionate, extraordinary humans everywhere, and that this crisis has really led to an incredible amount of innovation in a small window of time, and it's really extraordinary to watch that each and every day. Number three, that there are a range of coping strategies and responses that we're all having. Many of us on this call went into hyper mode, and that really, quite frankly, led to a tsunami of resources, which is amazing. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for that. But that we kind of need to take a pause. We're kind of recognizing that, I think, now in reflection, that this is really now the time to organize and sort that, and really start to match those resources to the specific needs of the communities and the people that we're serving. A couple more observations. We know that COVID-19 is impacting our Black and Brown and migrant communities, our vulnerable populations, at higher rates than others. And a lot of this is rooted in the social inequalities that existed way before COVID-19, but it's really, again, amplifying that in kind of, I know it feels like a gut punch each and every day as we watch this kind of unfold in real time. And I really have been holding the communities that have been impacted by flood recently, or with the fires in California and other places, and our friends in Flint, Michigan, about just kind of the basic needs of maybe just getting water sources, that might even be impacting them at a greater rate. 5, the wave of mental health needs are and will be staggering. But I also think that we need to hold that not everybody's going to be negatively impacted, and we need our experts to assist us in distinguishing between trauma response and stress response. And I also think that we should be focused on resilience, and if we can collectively build a model for building a community of resilience, we're going to be okay in being able to deal with this wave. In that space, I think it's also important to call out that we need to resist the temptation to add without really considering exactly what is needed now in the moment. And then letting our mental health leaders be the leaders in this space, in our teams, to build the capacity of everybody. All right, last couple here. I think in the conversations we've been having with you all across the country, the other thing I think we wanted to really kind of pull out and recognize is this space of opportunity, right? We've got this amazing 6-month window of time where, yes, the needs are really great, but we have an opportunity here to pause and reset where we can focus on what we know works, right? And to really build what we had begun with ISF and with our communitarian approaches, our collective impact approaches, all the things that we were doing to coalesce around these MTSS features. We know what to do, right? There's this, and even though the acceleration of need is there, I think that there will also be an acceleration of interest in an integrated approach, right? I think there will be the political will for a wider range of people to really engage with us in this work. And I think what we're seeing now more than ever is mental health is everyone's job, right? Everybody right now is a social worker. And that we honor that there are systems and structures that can promote wellness, but it's going to take a lot of changes in funding and policy, et cetera, to really be addressed if we're really going to meet this need. That healthy workforce is essential, and that we can't talk about academic rigor without talking about how we develop relationships, teach social emotional behavior competencies, and really focus on establishing this culture of wellness and this culture of resiliency in this space and time. So I think this is a really great opportunity that, that we call out, that actually teaching social emotional behavior and taking time to build and strengthen our relationships with one another is actually instructional time. So this leads me to the last kind of observation or call out with respect to moving into hearing from you and having some dialogue in this space that we're in right now. And that is that we've got this opportunity, and we were wanting to really kind of stop and pause and really reflect out what's going to be required and needed over the next 36 months. And that if we look at the scientists right now, I think we should be expecting this rolling phased in and phased out approach where we go in and out of that shelter in place. That in our planning of this kind of 36-month reset, that we talk about continuity of education, but as we're talking about that, we are also talking about continuity of care and support for all. And that the teaming process, whether we're in brick and mortar space or whether in virtual platform and using telehealth, the systems and structures need to be the same. The context is the thing that's going to change, but the systems and structures that we establish or that we strengthen right now will be that that help in establishing that continuity. That we need to develop, and we need to hear from you all about those creative ways that we're uncovering needs, because they're changing so quickly each and every day, and there's got to be really creative ways that we do that, and we've got to be dynamic and agile in that. And then finally, the data. How do we get the right data at the right time? How do we analyze it? How do we aggregate it? And how do we make sure that we have an all hands on deck approach as we meet this incredible wave of need? Okay, so I'm going to pause there, and hopefully that was helping us kind of coalesce around this ISF approach, but also really kind of call out some of the things that I think we're all witnessing in real time as we kind of hear from one another in the next, in the breakout room.
Okay. Can we just give some like waves, snaps, love to Susan? I don't even think you can see us, but thank you so much for pulling those together. Some of that may have resonated for folks, and some of you might have edits, and some of you might have your own experience. And so I just want to offer that when we break out, that's time to do a couple things. We're either, the invitation is to share either a challenge, contribution, or celebration, or a piece of wish that you have for this molding of an interconnected systems framework to support our school mental telehealth time. And I want to give an invitation that if after what Susan just offered, there's some brain buzz and folks just want to debrief and discuss, that's also okay. So both of those things. So a couple of things are going to happen, and I'm going to ask for everyone's flexibility and patience with this next move. So Kelsey is going to break us out into 8 small breakout rooms. You'll see on the right-hand side of your screen that we've got phenomenal breakout group facilitators. What's going to happen is that we're all going to be broken out, and then we as facilitators are going to go to our room. So there might be like a minute or 2 where you're going to have to just like hang out with each other without a facilitator, and that's going to be okay too. I'm going to invite you when you get into your small groups that you really, really try to do that curiosity over analysis, to spell out acronyms, to be mindful of mic time, and to use video if possible, noting both for privacy and bandwidth reasons you may not want to, but it really may help. And for facilitators, you can either share your screen, the Google Doc, or you can have it completely separate and have people be able to discuss and share with each other, which is preferable. I'm gonna just pause to see if there are questions in the group chat that I need to attend to, which is not, doesn't look like it. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand it to Kelsey, and I do wanna note that we are all gonna come back together at 12:57 or 8. All right, let's do it, Kelsey, we got this.
Okay, we're going to make this happen, and you all will get a 5-minute warning from me. It'll pop up on your screen when you're to come back. So give me just a minute.
Just click join the breakout room. Whatever you are comes up, just click it. We got this. Okay, so we're going to go around and do a share out. And I'm going to invite facilitators to be like as concise as possible when it comes to share out, because we want to have 5 minutes at the end. So that's like literally like a 30-40 second. Yes, Mina. Oh yeah, Leora's on Flake. Thank you. That's called old school chat right there, everybody. So we're gonna do a go around. We're gonna have group number 1 go first. And Kelsey, can I ask for you to take notes during this?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, group number 1. Like one major takeaway.
So the major takeaway that came out of our group that was feeling like an urgent concern is thinking about a possible increase in adult and youth suicide that some of the communities are already seeing, and the unique challenges of how do we support and address that virtually.
Thank you. That was Candace. Thank you. So I'm going to ask for folks, like when you hear something that feels resonant, you can give a thumbs up. You can do whatever you need to do in the chat box. You can star so that we know, yep, Jody knows how to do the claps. Thank you, Candace. And let's go to group number 2 for a share out.
So you want the most challenging thing. Okay. We didn't synthesize, we were brainstorming quite a bit, but I think when I'm looking at our notes, one of the big takeaways that I'm hearing is both a celebration and a challenge that people were really pivoting to be responsive to the needs, but we're curious to know how we, as Susan said earlier, kind of access these systems now equitably and in a way that we can sustain them with so much coming at folks.
Cool, thank you. And that was Kim, thank you. Not everyone can see your face when you go. Cool, awesome. Group 2, let's give some group 2s, and let's go to group 3.
Hi everyone, group 3 had a really good discussion. So many helpful details were shared and ideas. One of the things that came up a few times in comments that might be an overarching theme was the notion of helping people understand that when we go back to our brick and mortar schools, to have a plan in place for helping with mental health, and to encourage people not to dive right into the academics and try to return to that level of normalcy. So I think more that we can emphasize that would be very helpful.
Thanks, Kurt. That was group number 3. I'm Leora, group number 4. What a phenomenal group. We had representation from so many states and Vermont also. Shout out to across the country. Partners. So we talked, there was many different things. I'm going to try and sum it up. I think a through line was, how do we lift up what we're learning to be incredible moments of connection now? So family engagement, teachers having a much more personal and relational experience with students than they did before, access to families that schools may not have had access or figured out how to have access to, a higher focus on students in need. How do we maintain that focus when we get, quote unquote, when we transition out of this crisis time, to make it part of our regular practice? There was a couple pieces. One was like, how do we also stop the deluge of messaging and resources and actually kind of create time for folks to be reflective about their leadership practice? And also, how do we support the mental health of educators and those who are providing support services for students? So that was group number 4. I hope I did us justice. And with that, thanks, Britta. I'm going to move to group 5.
Hi, it's Natalie. You had a great conversation with our group. There was a lot of, I think, similar themes that you guys have already said from groups 1 through 4. Essentially, the idea of what platform legally can we use with our students that we're supporting and servicing. To maybe we need to consider, what does it SEL, social emotional, learning look for adults who are maybe balancing many hats, and so to take that into consideration as well. For the most part, it seemed everyone kind of had an idea, or again, just what we're experiencing already was working towards kind of the trenches and kind of had figured out some ways that are best to suit their needs, but again, or support students, excuse me. But essentially, it's just what can we do to really make contact with our community, our resources, where can we maybe connect with our families. So that's kind of another kind of big package that came out from our conversation, unless I missed something, group, but I think we got it. So thank you, group 5.
Thanks, group 5. All right, group 6.
Hi, Jessica Swain Bradway. Group 6, we had some good conversations. Some big ideas are really encouraging folks to remember to use those core features of MTSS instead of throwing everything at this and adding, and Susan, you said this at the beginning, instead of looking for the shiny object. And an interesting kind of question, or I don't know, Katie, you framed it as an urgent need. Katie Pullman, Brilliant Thoughts for Midwest, but one of her comments really resonated with what data are our districts using and what should we be looking at to distally support our students and families now that our data points have changed and we don't have kiddos in front of us every single day. So that was a really interesting question and thought, and I thought that bears all of us kind of putting our brains on as a group.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, group 7.
Hi, this is Sandra. I think that we can sum it up by using a word of perspective, and that some of us were concerned about the fact that our school districts are really right now still basing their needs on Maslow's hierarchy and not at a point to involve mental health needs. And yet our group member reminded us about the greatest need right now in some of her communities that are rural, indigenous groups, and on reservations is really just the basic need for that healthcare, for those ventilators, for that food. So while it was a little bit of a dichotomy, it really put the perspective. So in one case, it's complaining about just using higher Maslow's, and then the other one is that this is the real need of community, and it's still just access to that healthcare that's needed and those basic needs.
Thanks, Sandra. We know that Maslow also learned a lot about his hierarchy from Indigenous communities. So there's also an opportunity for us to actually serve Indigenous communities with the framework that they themselves created. So thank you for naming that. Let's move to group number 8.
All right. So what we did here was that there was an amazing amount of energy and collaboration that was happening amongst the folks in their communities. The people were really, doing a good job pivoting, and were game for it, and were accepting of the fact that there were going to be challenges, but we're really, really committed to that. So that was really nice to hear. Similar to other groups, there were a number of logistical issues about platforms, HIPAA, FERPA, note-taking, what to do about files that were needed that are still in hard copy. And then trying to identify the diversity of needs when based on a number of factors, so many people need so many different kinds of things, and the best way to approach that can really meet the diversity of needs out there.
Thank you. Okay, did I miss any group? Kelsey.
Yeah, so Pat Sanborn and I ended up in the main session in a group together. So
Good.
Woot woot, group 9. We had many similar things that we discussed. What will school look like next year? How do we prepare for that? But you know, Pat really elevated a critical point in that we were already operating in silos, and that the virtual nature of things may even widen those gaps even more. So we have to be intentional about continuing to weave and connect our work together, and not let those silos grow.
Okay, thank you, Organic Group 9, Pat and Kelsey. Okay, so we're moving into our close. I want to do a couple offerings. First, I want to acknowledge it sounds like Group 1 had a little bit of tech challenge. So if some of you are feeling like, I wanted to discuss and I didn't get time to discuss, and then I'm also seeing in the chat box that some of you thought like, yes, it was great, but also too short. So lots of head nodding. So I just want to offer either in the chat box or to raise your hand and unmute, like, is this, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. In the chat box, if I can just get like asterisks or exclamation points for folks who like a format like this to continue the conversation. Okay, yes, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, there we go. That's some data. Excellent. So I think what Kelsey and I are committing to do, and Susan, I can't see you, but I feel you always next to me, is that we'd like to continue to host more time and with less input and much more discussion so that we can brainstorm. And I think what we're also going to try and do is think about how to both create groups that are across difference, so county, state, partner, and then in affinity. So folks who can be in role-alikes. And we may also potentially suggest some work groups so that we can start to kind of like brainstorm and create. Would anyone either in the chat box or at risk of unmuting themselves and saying something, are there any other suggestions for the ways that we can move this momentum forward? Yes, work groups. Greg, okay. Does anyone want to give me a wave or just unmute yourself with what would make your heart beat with happiness for how this work would move forward?
I think when it was mentioned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how you had a dichotomous response within the same group, you know, I think it would be helpful for districts or states that have remote regions and, for instance, our Alaska Native population, to share ideas and get connected. You know, we have both. We have a couple of big city school districts, but the rest are rural or remote, meaning you have to fly in. So I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got rural, remote, and then potentially population focus specific. Thank you. Any other ways that this could we can support you to move forward? Also, I don't know if you say your name Lion, but Amanda says Amanda wants to link up in rural Nevada. So there you go. You can connect with Amanda in the chat box. Mike Lombardo, any ideas for moving forward? You always have ideas.
I would love it if we could do this in person.
Well,
but
I second that idea.
I like the format. A little more time maybe in the work group to really look at some of the barriers that people are facing. Also, I too am very concerned about our transition post-COVID back to school.
Yeah.
I'm frightened that the gap is going to be wider than we've ever seen before. And so how do we use our multi-tiered systems and PBIS to help support schools as we come back to school next year?
Thank you. Okay, Samantha or Sam is saying yes to that. Any last comments? So any last comments or wishes for this experience?
This is Yasmina. I had to turn my camera off because our internet is sort of unstable, so it won't let me see. But I was hoping, I put the link in the chat box, if we could release something like together, like the framework for safe and successful schools. If we just had, I would just love it if there was some national unity around it, around the guidance for best practices that were kind of co-signed by some national organizations. That I think would carry a lot of weight in some of our districts, and with our state leaders and possibly our legislatures, if there was any possibility of policy changes from this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So lots of agreement, Yasmina. So that's like, how do we create something that's unified? And again, I think if we can commit in this group that we create something that's unified, not only in the what to do, but also in the how and the why and for whom, so that we keep that the leadership and those leading at the forefront, which is often, I feel, is often missed. So all that to say, I want to do a offering that it is 1:15. Kelsey and myself, we can stay on for about 5 minutes afterwards. I want to do a massive kudos to Susan for putting together her thoughts at the forefront. I want to say thank you to Kelsey and Megan and to my colleagues. And I want to say thank you to all of you for signing up and signing in, and to our facilitators. We can get some love for the facilitators who in like 5 minutes said yes to doing that. So thank you so much. So we'll stay on for about 5 minutes. You will get a survey afterwards. Please fill out that survey so that we can get input and also we can continue. And then Kelsey and I will be sending a follow-up for some signups, because it sounds like we're going to be hanging out at lunch potentially more often in the future. So we're
Megan did put the link to the survey. We would really appreciate you taking a few minutes just to fill that out as you log off.
Yes, and there are many, both from the Northwest and for our center and MHTTC's and Nancy and Sharon's center, many other opportunities coming up. So I'm gonna just highlight and put the survey in the chat box one more time, and then y'all can continue on your day unless you want to hang out with us. Thank you so much.